Hare Krishna. So welcome everyone. We'll begin reading. Let me share the screen. Anyone recalls what we discussed yesterday, where we ended? We ended with a very beautiful glorification by the Brajavasis, right? A very beautiful glorification by Brajavasis. O great preacher of the Vedic culture, formerly a great saint, formerly a great many swamis went to foreign countries, but now you have wonderfully preached the Sankirtan movement and the sublime philosophy of bhakti cult in the Western countries. That is the only means for giving peace and prosperity to all people of the world in this age. For preaching religion and culture, your holy name will remain ever dazzling. No, I don't know, maybe he's referring to his holy name is your name. To speak frankly, we feel a very intimate relationship with you, and we feel perfect satisfaction at this time in the privilege to present you this address of welcome. We take it for granted that you are one of us in Vrindavan. We are sure that wherever it's interesting, this we take you for granted that you are one of us in the Vrindavan. We are sure that wherever you travel, you must carry with you the impression of Sri Vrindavan Dham, the culture, religion, philosophy, transcendental existence of Sri Vrindavan Dham travel with you. Therefore, the great message Your Holiness carries, all the people of the world are now becoming very intimately related with Vrindavan Dham. We are certainly sure that through your preaching alone, the transcendental message of Vrindavan will spread all over the world. May you be crowned a success in these noble activities. So in this way, they had glorified, and Prabhupada had given a brief talk, saying, you remember what did he say? Anyone remember what did he say? At the end, you remember? What did he say at the end to everybody? He said the Krishna consciousness movement is not a Hindu religion. It is for everybody, right? It says, Sarvapadi Vinimuktam. I take birth in a particular land, American Indian. It's not. It's for everybody. So as long as one is Hindu or Muslim Christian, there is no question of Krishna consciousness. So we will start from today's reading tonight. So these boys and girls, or ladies and gentlemen who have joined me, they have given up their designations. They are no longer Americans or Canadians or Australians. They are thinking of themselves as eternal servants of Lord Krishna. Without this, there is no question of liberation from the material contamination. As long as there is material contamination, we have to devise these social orders and spiritual orders according to Shastra as Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaishya, Sudra, Brahmachari, Grahastha, Vanprastha, and Sannyas. These are all material designations, but this Krishna conscious movement is for becoming transcendental to these material designations. And these boys, these foreigners, they are being taught in that light. When I started my propaganda in New York, 26 2nd Avenue, that time only half a dozen boys were coming and hearing. That hearing means I was singing and chanting Hare Krishna mantra and reading some verses from Bhagavad Gita. And they were patiently hearing. Because I know if someone patiently hears the holy name of Krishna or about his pastimes, then Srunvatam Sukata Krishna, Krishna purifies him from within. So actually, it does not, so actually it so happened that these boys and girls, I say boys and girls because in the Western countries there is no distinction. They are given equal liberty. In our country, there is still discrimination. I mean to say, grown-up boys and girls are not allowed to mix together, although it is going on now. But in European countries, there is no such restrictions. So there was no possibility of making any distinction between the boys and girls. So many of them are attending. I was chanting in Tompkins Square Park, and these boys and girls used to surround me and dance and chant Hare Krishna mantra. Some of them become a little advanced and purified, and some came forward. Swamiji, please accept me as your disciple. So my condition was that anyone who wants to become my disciple must be free from the four kinds of sinful activities. Rasgulla? Okay. Sorry for that. I don't know. Go ahead. Sinful activities. So illicit connections with human, meat eating, intoxication, gambling. In this way, on this condition, these boys and girls were accepted as my disciples. According to Pancharatrik Vidhi, when they are fairly advanced, they are given the sacred thread, Upanayana Samskara, following the path and instruction of my Guru Maharaj. His divine grace, Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami Prabhupada. According to Shastra, they should not be considered as coming from families of Mlechas and Yavanas. They should not be considered like that because they are now purified. And they should not be considered like that because they are not purified. That is also mentioned by Sukadeva Goswami in the Srimad Bhagavatam, and you know of it. Kirata Hunandra Pulinda Pulkasa Avira Sumbha Yavana Khasadaya Ye Nyecha Papa Yad Apasrayasrayah Sudhyanti Tasmai Prabhavisnave Namaha. How to become purified? By taking shelter of a bona fide spiritual master. So they are all purified according to the Pancharatrik Vidhi, and many of them have got this sacred thread. This introduction, this addressing is very, very important after coming to Vrindavan. So when Prabhupada went from Vrindavan to America, that's a different culture. When Prabhupada returns, he brings something different, which Indian had never thought, conceived. They were still living in their own, window room. In that sense, they have no idea what to expect everything. Thus, Prabhupada makes a very clear this thing. First, he says that Krishna consciousness is for everybody. Anyone understand why Prabhupada is doing all this? Can anyone say?
Yeah, bro. So basically, in India, people never seen any like foreign devotees just moving as if the same principles, everything. So people will be like very surprised, like how come, foreign devotees mingle as if as an Indian devotee. Like some people might take it lightly, and some people might not like that itself. Like they may protest actually. How come an foreigner can enter this temple? That kind of questions may come probably.
Right.
To solve all this.
Right. That's why Indian in Hindu religion is suffering, because many times we did not allow. We had our own monopoly, Brahmins and everybody, and they did not allow because they may not accept it. That's the problem. Now the challenge is there. So Prabhupada has made it very clear that in addressing, this is for everybody. Krishna conscious movement is for everyone. Now again, when he's saying addressing as ladies and gentlemen, Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaishya, Sudra, as long as, hey, what are you doing? Take the water from there. Take the water from the orange jug, yeah. As long as in material contamination, we have devised these social orders, Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaishya, Sudra, and all this, brahmachari, sannyas, all these designations, these all are material designations. But this Krishna consciousness movement is for becoming transcendental to this. So, you know, in India, we have a caste which is needed, but so prominent. We are so attached to that. Now, Prabhupada is saying these are material designations. You must accept these devotees on the transcendental platform. Even though they do not think they have come from Mlechas and Yavan, do not think, you should not consider them as Mlechas and Yavanas. Okay. Now he said, brief how they came. When I was in 26 Second Avenue, I just started a little chanting, and some people started, you know, singing and dancing with me. And some out of them, they become sincerely attracted, and they asked me if you can you give initiation? They can become disciples. So Prabhupada, based on Pancharatrika Vid, he accepted. Based on the Shastras, he accepted. Based on the I say boys and girls, then he said that again. So this is a cultural shock. What kind of sadhu they'll be mingling with boy, man and boy and girl? So Prabhupada made it very clear now. He said that I say boy and girl because in Western countries, that's the culture. You cannot, so by speaking all this, Prabhupada is making them accept, adapt them, don't criticize them. And more than that, he said that so many of them attending, they got purified. Some of them become a little advanced and asked me to make the disciples. Now, here, so my condition was that anyone who comes, so Prabhupada is giving now Shastric evidence why I accepted and what is their position. How, not only that, I made them Brahmana. I made them Brahmana based on the Srimad Bhagavatam statement. Kirata Hunandra Pulinda Pulkasa Avira Sambha Yavanaha Khasadeha. So basically, from Srimad Bhagavatam, I think it's first canto or second canto, I forgot. Which can, yeah, I think first canto it is there. So how he says that all these classes of people who are considered low, you know, they can become a pure devotee of the Lord. How to become purified? By taking shelter of a bona fide spiritual master. So they are all purified according to the Pancharatrika Vedi, and many of them have got the sacred thread. So they are actually Brahmanas. So how Prabhupada is covering all this thing, and it's a great why he is to preach, because they should accept them as a representatives, as their own. Okay, so Cyclone Prabhu.
To the Western countries, they are very luxuriously situated. My disciples are giving me residential quarters even a governor could not imagine. I remember one night, sometime back, I was a guest in a Lucknow government house. At that time, the governor was Vishwanath Das, and he was personally known to me. So I remember the kind of luxurious apartment where I had the opportunity to lie down one night. But they, my disciples, are giving me all this. So we cannot reject that, because that is the standard of living in America. You cannot say no, I shall. 1 second. I think if you bring it down, Prabhu, I'm not able to see it on this. No, I shall not. I think if you can bring it down a little bit more, like I think in my phone, I'm not able to see that, Prabhu. Yeah, yes, Prabhu. No, I shall not lie down in this nice apartment. I shall lie down in the street. I am a sannyasi. Then nobody will respect me. There in America, the standard of living is like that. Therefore, Rup Goswami says that you should not be attached to that, but for the service of Krishna. If you have to such things, you should receive it. People are engaged in the service of Maya, but we want to engage everything in the service of the Lord. This is the that is the Krishna consciousness movement. So we are using airplanes, we are using dictaphones, we are using teletype machine. Even for cleansing our floor, we are using a machine. This is the system. In each and every center, we have got new cars. We cannot do without them. In Europe and America, practically no gentleman walks in the street. It is a system there, so we have to use it. But we should not be attached to it. Our attachment should be only for Krishna, and for Krishna's service, we can accept anything. That is the Krishna consciousness movement. Prabhupada concluded his address by asking for land. He wanted to establish a temple for his society in Vrindavan. Afterward, a Mr. S, a motor parts salesman and resident of Vrindavan, offered Prabhupada a plot of land his family had been saving for some worthy religious purpose. Prabhupada smiled. Although he had only just arrived in Vrindavan, already Krishna was providing an opportunity for establishing his ISKCON center. Prabhupada thanked Mr. S for offering this service to Lord Krishna. By his donating land, the Krishna consciousness movement would increase and the donor, Mr. S, would benefit. Prabhupada was aware that behind the formal reception and ceremonial words of Vrindavan's prominent citizens dwelt a deeper feeling of reserve and even suspicion, especially among the caste Goswamis, the proprietors of Vrindavan's major temples. While accepting Srila Prabhupada's foreign disciples as devotees of a sort, many Vrindavan residents nevertheless felt reluctant to accept the foreign Vaishnavas as Brahmanas, Sannyas, and Pujaris. The misunderstanding was due to a traditional Hindu concept. Only those born in the caste Brahmana families could become Brahmanas. So here Prabhupada is continuing his lecture at Vrindavan. And Prabhupada here explains that in the Western countries, basically, even though it looks like they are all living luxuriously, Prabhupada says that is the need there. Like everyone has a car. They don't. A sannyasi cannot stay like on a street there. No
I
one will rest.
will give a little brief here.
Sure,
Is that
Prabhupada.
okay?
Yes.
For the first certain sections, Prabhupada covered his disciples by speaking, by explaining the Shastric evidence that you must accept them as the bona fide. They are Brahmanas now, they have a sacred thread. You all understood, right? Now this statement, Prabhupada is covering himself. You know why? People will condemn. What kind of sadhu he is? Just like in Delhi, people condemn what kind of sadhu he is. He's getting angry. What kind of sadhu he is? He's going in flight, he's going in this, he's having all these machines and everything. He's coming and going in car. It's a big cultural shock. Remember this. Prabhupada is really powerful and the Lord's instrument. Not only he brought all this, then you have to pacify these people, both India and America. Now, while going there, he had to explain the difference, cultural difference. After coming up, he has to explain, he has to give justification of his own position. Prabhupada is living in a nice place. They're offering a nice room, everything. So I hope you all know this is a very deep conditioning in devotion in Indian culture. They cannot accept. Even we all. For us, I don't know if you all noticed that. I was thinking, how come the devotees, the sannyasis can live like this? So this is the deeper conditioning there in the Indian. We have it. We can accept it. So that's why Prabhupada is covering that one should not be attached. However, one should engage. Everything comes in the service of the Lord without rejecting. And that's why he's giving analogy that my disciples, they offer good service in America also. You maybe you can, I know you can say, go ahead. God, you can further explain. I want to cover the Prabhupada.
So basically here, Prabhupada explains that even though it looks like they're living richly, but it is, here it says, Rupa Goswami says that if you're using anything for Krishna, then you can accept for anything. So that is the Krishna consciousness movement, and that is the reason Like everyone, like Prabhupada says, justifies the using of aeroplanes, dictaphones, teletype machines, and even for cleaning they use machines. So that way, everyone is using, even though it seems like materialistic from outside, but if they're using it for Krishna consciousness, for Krishna service, he says that that is fine. And he concluded his address by asking for land, and one person, Mr. S, he offered his plot of land that came from his family, and he Prabhupada smiled. So even though he just arrived, Krishna was giving him an opportunity for establishing a ISKCON center in Vrindavan. And I think that's it.
Okay, Nipa, please.
Hare Krishna. Prabhupada was aware that behind the formal reception and ceremonial words of Vrindavana's prominent citizens dwelt a deeper feeling of reserve and even suspicion, especially among the caste Goswamis, the proprietors of Vrindavana's major temples. While accepting Srila Prabhupada's foreign disciples as devotees of a sort, many Vrindavana residents nevertheless felt reluctant to accept the foreign Vaishnavas as Brahmanas, sannyasis, and pujaris. This understanding was due to a traditional Hindu concept. Only those born in the caste Brahmana families could become Brahmanas. Prabhupada, however, followed exactly in the footsteps of Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati, who had freely accepted anyone regardless of sex or social position. When in 1932 Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati had led more than 1,000 followers in a Vrindavana pilgrimage, certain prideful caste Brahmanas had denied the pilgrims entry into the temples. The pilgrims had been harassed by rock throwers and boycotted by shopkeepers. Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati had then met with Brahmanas of Vrindavana and had scripturally proved to them that the soul, being transcendental, was free from designation and that anyone who became a Vaishnava automatically qualified as a Brahmana. The prejudices, however, had remained. Prabhupada also followed Srila Bhakti Siddhanta in denying that the Goswami title could be inherited. Goswami meant one who controlled the senses, and the title could not be adapted simply because one was born in the family of so called Goswamis. The original Goswamis were the six Goswamis of Vrindavana: Sri Sanatana, Sri Rupa, Sri Raghunatha Bhatta, Sri Jiva, Sri Gopala Bhatta, and Sri Raghunatha Dasa Goswamis, all of whom were in the renounced order and were therefore without issue. Almost 500 years ago, these six Goswamis had discovered the place of Krishna's Vrindavana pastimes and had built the first big temples in Vrindavana. They had appointed married disciples to carry on the deity worship in their temples, and now the descendants of those original priests were claiming exclusive rights as temple Goswamis in Vrindavana. Prabhupada had written in the Nectar of Devotion about their spiritual master's struggle in this matter. So Prabhupada was aware about the formal reception and the words of Vrindavana's as prominent citizens, as they were having a reservation of deeper feeling and suspicion, and among especially for the caste of Goswamis, the proprietors, which were the proprietors of Vrindavana's major temples. And while Srila Prabhupada accepted the foreign disciples as devotees, many Vrindavana residents felt reluctant to accept the foreign Vaishnavas as Brahmanas, sannyasis, and pujaris. There was a misunderstanding due to the traditional Hindu concept. Traditional Hindu concept which says that those born in the caste Brahmana actually could only become Brahmanas, Brahmana family. So Prabhupada followed exactly the footsteps of Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati, who actually accepted everyone freely without regardless of their sex or social position. In 1932, Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati had led more than 1,000 followers in Vrindavana pilgrimage, and certain prideful caste Brahmanas actually denied the pilgrims entry into the temples. The pilgrims were harassed by, they were like some rocks were thrown on them and they were boycotted by shopkeepers. Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati had then met with Brahmanas of Vrindavana and proved scripturally that the soul is transcendental, as free from designation, and anyone who becomes a Vaishnava automatically is qualified as a Brahmana. But the prejudice kind of remained. Prabhupada followed Srila Bhaktisiddhanta's footsteps in denying that Goswami titles could be inherited. Goswami meant like one who can control the senses, and the title cannot be adopted just because one is born in the so-called Goswamis. The original Goswamis were like the six Goswamis of the Vrindavana, which is like Sri Sanatana, Sri Rupa, Raghunatha Bhatta, Sri Jiva, Sri Gopala Bhatta, and Sri Raghunatha Dasa Goswamis in a renounced order. And therefore, there was no without any issue. Among 500 years ago, these six Goswamis had discovered the places of Krishna's Vrindavana pastimes, and they had built the first temples in Vrindavana. Uh, they appointed married disciples to carry on the deity worship in the temples, and now the descendants of these original priests were claiming exclusive rights in the temple. Prabhupada had written this in the Nectar of Devotion about the spiritual master's struggle in this matter.
Prasanthi, please.
After the disappearance of Lord Chaitanya's great associate Lord Nityananda, a class of priestly persons claimed to be the descendants of Nityananda, calling themselves the Goswami caste. They further claimed that the practice and spreading of the devotional service belonged only to their particular class, which was known as Nityananda Vamsa. In this way, they exercised their artificial power for some time until Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur, the powerful Acharya of Gaudiya Vaishnava Sampradaya, completely smashed their idea. There was a great hard struggle for some time, but it was turned out successfully, and it is now correctly and practically established that devotional service is not restricted to a particular class of men. Prabhupada therefore opposed the caste Goswami's ideas of birthright, and the caste Goswamis feared Prabhupada's movement since it threatened their hereditary social preeminence. Yet, on this occasion of Prabhupada's triumphant return, after preaching Vrindavana's glories to the Western world, no one protested his attempts to establish a temple. Those who disagreed remained silent or even offered flowery praise. The land was in Ramanareti. Prabhupada noted that the property on the outskirts of Vrindavana was located on busy Chatikara Road, a main thoroughfare into Vrindavana and traffic route to Agra and Taj Mahal. The land was also adjacent to the Vrindavana Parikrama path, where millions of pilgrims passed annually circumambulating Vrindavana and visiting its temples and holy places. Ramana Reti, literally charming sand, was mostly forest with a few ashrams and abandoned fields. Celebrated as a favorite spot of Krishna's, where he and his brother Balrama and their cowherd boys had played 5,000 years ago. Ramana Reti abandoned in transcendental love of God, abounded, abounded in transcendental love of God, which is the special atmosphere of Vrindavana. Although various city officials had casually mentioned that the city might donate land, Prabhupada took more seriously Mr. S's offer. Mr. S explained that although other sadhus had been asking for the land, he and his wife had not yet decided. They wanted to give it to a group who would build a Radhakrishna temple there as soon as possible. When Prabhupada assured Mr. S he would do so, Mr. S vowed that the land was now Prabhupada's. Prabhupada had heard such promises before, and they had often proved false. But considering his offer serious, He appointed disciples to remain in Vrindavana to draw up a deed with Mr. S. After the disappearance of Lord Chaitanya's associate, Lord Nityananda, a group of people claimed themselves as Nityananda's descendants, and they claimed the practice and devotional service, uh, and they called themselves as Nityananda Vamsa. Um, and, uh, uh, and and such claims and such artificial power were so Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati did not accept such artificial power, and he always smashed that idea, and he always tried to practically establish that devotional service is not restricted to a particular class of men. Um, and the same idea was also proposed by Prabhupada, saying that caste Goswamis is not a birthright. And the same, and that's how he's explaining how the Westerners also got their Brahmana initiation, and how they can become Brahmanas, and everybody doesn't have the Goswamis or Brahmana through the birthright, and they have to earn it. And a land was seen at Ramana Reddy. It is at the outskirts of Vrindavana. It comes under the Parikrama path of Vrindavana. Many millions of people circumambulate in that path and visit the holy places. It is surrounded with few ashramas and some abandoned fields. So it is famous for a spot for Krishna and Balarama used to celebrate as the favorite spot for Krishna and Balarama 5,000 years ago. And city officials casually mentioned to offer the land, but Mr. S was more serious and he wanted to give the land to Prabhupada because they are going to build, they promised to build the Radha Krishna temple. Although many people assured to give, although Prabhupada has seen such offers before, he wants to proceed onto this seriously and to draw up a deed and to put some disciples in that area so that they can build the temple.
Done?
Yes.
Yeah, thank you. No noise. We have children having party. So one thing I want to say that look at the situation. When we contemplated Prabhupada's struggle, no one was taking. It was an impossible task. He brings back his Western disciples. And after coming, now he has to go through all this struggle. Cultural shock. People won't accept how material world brings so much of obstacles. It's not very easy. Okay, I think second Prabhu, Vijayanand Prabhu, you please read.
Meanwhile, Prabhupada took his disciples on a pilgrimage to many of the important holy places of Vrindavana. Varshana, the birthplace of Srimati Radharani; Gokula, the place of Krishna's earliest pastimes; Radhakund, Govardhana, and Vrindavana's major temples. At Govardhana, Prabhupada told the devotees not to step on Govardhana hill or pick up any of the rocks. Govardhana hill was non-different from Krishna. Also at Govardhana, Prabhupada took the devotees to a little temple where he showed them Krishna's footprint. The footprint was very large. If Krishna's foot had been that big, the devotees marveled that then he must have 8 feet tall. Yes, Prabhupada said. They were much bigger then. Near Govardhana at Bindu Sarovara, Sarovara, a lake commemorating the place where Radha and Krishna first met. The devotees swam while Prabhupada bathed from buckets of water in the nearby field. Later, while Prabhupada took prasadam, the devotees tried to chase away a few stray dogs by throwing stones and yelling. But Prabhupada stopped them. Leave them alone, he said. He began throwing the dog prasadam from his plate. At Varshana, the birthplace of Radharani, the devotees carried Prabhupada on a palanquin up the many steep steps to the temple. On the top of the hill, he looked toward a distant hill. Just over there, he said, pointing, Krishna used to come down that hill. Radha would come down this hill, and they would meet in the middle. There was a forest there, so this is a very special place because it is the meeting place of Radha and Krishna. In each holy place, Prabhupada would sit down, hold a kirtana, and come before the deity and offer obeisances. And he would briefly describe the pastimes of Krishna related with that particular place. Dinadyadri. The Indians the Indians at the holy places were always hounding Prabhupada for money. They assumed that his disciples, being Americans, were rich, so they wanted money. Prabhupada would give something, but there were so many that as soon as he would give to one, half a dozen others would crowd around him, preventing him from walking by. In some of the temples, they would not let us enter. Prabhupada then took his group to the place beside the Yamuna where Krishna had shown his mother all the universes within his mouth. Touching the water, Prabhupada said, it is too cold for an old man like me, but you take a bath. I will put a few drops on my head. He directed the woman to a separate place to swim, where the Indian woman bathed and the men plunged in and began swimming. They spouted in the water as Prabhupada stood on the bank, watching. Suddenly, Prabhupada put on a gamcha, walked to the river's edge, sprinkled some water on his head, then waded in up to his knees. The devotees were delighted to see him duck beneath the water and began bathing and splashing with them in the Yamuna. So Prabhupada took his disciples on a pilgrimage to all the important holy places of Vrindavana, Varshana, the birthplace of Srimati Radharani, Gokula, the place of Krishna's earliest pastimes, and then Radha Kund, Govardhana, and Vrindavana's major temples. And at Govardhana, Prabhupada mentioned to devotees not to step on the Govardhana hill or pick up any of the rocks. And he also mentioned that Govardhana hill was non-different from Krishna. And also, he took the devotees to a little temple where he showed the footprint of Krishna, and it was very large. And then the devotees marveled that Krishna should have been very big, and he must have been at least 8 feet tall. As Prabhupada said, they were bigger than. And near the Govardhana at Bindu Sarovara, a lake commemorating the place where the Radha and Krishna first met, devotees bath from the buckets of water. Devotees swam and the Prabhupada bath from the buckets of water. And while Prabhupada took prasadam, devotee tried to chase away a few stray dogs by throwing stones and yelling at them. But Prabhupada asked them to stop it and leave them alone. And Prabhupada gave the prasadam to those dogs. And at Varshana, the birthplace of Radharani, devotees carried Prabhupada on a palanquin, which was like many steep steps to the temple on one top of the hill. And he looked toward a distant hill and he showed them the devotee that on that place, just over there, Krishna used to come down that hill and Radha would come down this hill and they would meet in the middle. There was a forest there and it was like a special place, because it is a meeting place of Radha and Krishna. On each holy place, Prabhupada would sit down and hold kirtana and before the deity and offer obeisances, and he would describe the pastimes of Krishna related to that particular place. And also, it was mentioned that wherever Prabhupada went with his disciples, there are a lot of Indians hounding Prabhupada for money, and they were assuming that since the disciples are from America, they will be very rich, and so they wanted money. So Prabhupada gave something, but still, a lot of people came and asking for money, and if Prabhupada was preventing them and walking, they were not letting to enter the temple. And Prabhupada took his group to a place near beside the Yamuna, where Krishna showed his mother all the universes within his mouth. And he also mentioned that the water is too cold for an old man like him. And he asked other devotees to bath. So Prabhupada stood on the bank, and then suddenly he put on a gamcha and walked to the river's edge and sprinkled some water on his head. The devotees were delighted to see him behind the dug beneath the water, and they began bathing and splashing in Yamuna.
Okay. Thank you. Maybe I will read. Srila Prabhupada decided that he would remain in his quarters at Mr. Saraf's home, while his old friend, his Saran Sharma, took the devotees to Vrindavan's famous temples. Prabhupada did, however, make a point of going with his disciples to visit the Radha Damodar temple, where he had lived for several years, writing Srimad Bhagavatam and Back to God in magazine before going to America in 1965. At the Radha Damodar temple, Prabhupada told the devotees of his plans for an ISKCON temple in Vrindavan. And he suggested to the Radha Damodar Pujari that ISKCON use the Radha Damodar temple. We shall prepare the whole temple nicely, Prabhupada said, and we shall make a silver throne for the deity. 50 to 100 men will take prasadam here. It will be unique. If you want to, we can do it. Otherwise, we can start our own temple somewhere. We are prepared to spend money. If you give us a chance, we will spend it here. We want to make this a great festival in Vrindavan because it is Jiva Goswami's place. Rupa Goswami and Jiva Goswami sat here. We have a literature, we have books. Everyone is associating with us all over the world. Yamuna Devidasi. His divine grace was very frequently giving indication of how much we wanted his rooms at Radha Damodar maintained nicely. He was extremely fond of his quarters there. One night during his stay in Sarab Bhavan, he agreed that he would stay for one 24-hour period within his rooms at the Radha Damodar temple. It was a very exciting event for all of us to look forward to. He selected 3 or 4 men to accompany him to spend the night there at the Radha Damodar temple. Sarab Bhavan was some distance from Seva Kunj, where Radha Damodar temple is located. During the very early hours of the morning, I walked through the streets of Vrindavan and arrived at the Radha Damodar temple. Inside of Srila Prabhupada's sleeping room, I could see the light coming through the latticed red stone windows and the wooden shutters. Back and forth, he was walking and chanting. Suddenly, very much to my surprise, the wooden shutters burst open. The shaft of light filled a small corner of the courtyard. Prabhupada stood in his room under one bare light bulb. When he saw me, he asked, "How have you gotten here?" I said that I had walked. "Oh, this is not good," he said. "It is very dangerous in the street. There are so many wild dogs and there are dacoits. In this quarter, a man will kill even for a lota water pot." So there was so chastisement from Prabhupada on the one hand, but on the other hand, he seems to please. "So you are chanting japa?" he said. And I said, "Yes, Prabhupada." He said, "That is very nice. So go to the samadhi of Rupa Goswami and chant there." Then around 4 o'clock, other pilgrims started to filter in to attend the morning Aarti program. Prabhupada came out where we were chanting, and he saw that this corner of Radha Damodar temple was just like a hub of wheel of a spiritual world. It was the center. He requested that his rooms always be well maintained and that they be cleansed daily. Oh, Oh, Radhanath, first of all, I would like to let me finish Radhanath, I had only met Srila Prabhupada briefly in Bombay, and then I had gone alone to live in Vrindavan. I had lived there about 6 months with the local people, and it was there that I got real attached to Krishna consciousness. I used to just live on the bank of the river with all the Babajis, a very simple life. I knew, I know it was just by that initial contact with Prabhupada that seed was planted. One day, a big bus full of American devotees having a kirtan pulled into Vrindavan. And I was thinking, oh, here they are again. The first thing I asked was, is Prabhupada coming? And they said, yes, Prabhupada is here. He'll be speaking tomorrow morning. I'm excited to read this now, and very beautiful things. Here, Mr. Saraf. Okay, this one we read, right? Prabhupada decided that he would remain in his quarters at Mr. Saraf's home. If you remember, Prabhupada rented there, right, for some time, right? Then he was moved to Radha Damodar temple back and forth. While his old friend Hissar and Sharma took the devotees to Vrindavan famous temples, Prabhupada did, however, make a point that going with his disciples to Radha Damodar temple. So Prabhupada personally wanted to give a tour of Radha Damodar temple to his disciples, while Hissar and Sharma did to other temples. Prabhupada, that's his heart is there in Radha Damodar temple. He lived for several years. He wrote Srimad Bhagavatam. He went to America before, back to God magazine before going to America in 1965. So here in Radha Damodar temple, Prabhupada told the devotees of his plans for ISKCON temple in Vrindavan. And he suggested to the Radha Damodar Pujari that ISKCON use the Radha Damodar temple. For your information, Radha Damodar temple is the most spiritual, devotional place. All the great deities of many great acharyas are there. All the samadhis of the great acharyas are there. It's the holiest place. The holiest place. So he suggested to pujaris of Radha Damodar temple. Anyway, so now we shall prepare the whole temple nicely, he was suggested, and we will make a silver throne for the deity. 50 to 100 men will take prasadam here. All this thing he proposed, because Jiva Goswami, Rupa Goswami, all were sat here. We have literatures, books, everything associated with this temple actually. Now Yamuna, so he stayed there in the room for 24 hours, it looks like, for some time. Yamuna Devi, she says that she walked she walked from Sarabhavan to Damodar temple in the night, middle of the night. And when Prabhupada see that distance she walked, and Prabhupada, when he saw that Yamuna is there through the window, he's surprised. He said, how did you come here? She said, I walked. They said, this is very dangerous and people will rob. And people may kill also for small little pot. Lota also they can do. So anyway, now he says that anyway you have come, you chant in front of the Samadhi of Gopinath, Rupa Goswami. So she did this, and around 4 o'clock, basically she arrived way before 4 o'clock, looks like. 4 o'clock devotees started, pilgrims started coming, attending Mangala Arati and everything. And he also said that rooms should be well maintained, cleansed daily. Now, first time Radhanath Swami's Maharaj's testimony is coming here. Oh, sorry. He said that Radhanath Swami Maharaj, if you know, we didn't cover. He saw Prabhupada in a pandal. That's not in the written here, in Bombay pandal. He said that when he saw, he's been 6 months here with local people. He was the only American, or a couple of others were there. No one else. Looks like Prabhupada didn't bring Americans until that time. So when he saw this bus load of people came, he said, "Oh, here they are." Then he's asking, "Is Prabhupada coming?" He said, "Yes, Prabhupada is also coming." So this is Ravna Swami Maharaj meeting first time the devotees there. Sai Kiran Prabhu, please.
Yes, Lord. I was already attracted to a lot of gurus in Vrindavan, Prabhupada's godbrothers and also devotees from other sampradayas. But on the morning when I came for the Bhagavatam class and heard Prabhupada chanting Jai Radha Madhava, I just sat there and listened. I have never seen anyone with such a quality of love for Krishna. All the great people I had met in India became insignificant when I saw Prabhupada chanting Jai Radha Madhava. He was so serious and grave, and the quality of his devotion was so intense. I just couldn't believe it. He kept looking over at me every now and then, kind of nodding, because I guess he remembered me from Bombay. Then he spoke and he was glorifying Vrindavan so nicely. He was talking about how wonderful Vrindavan is, how spiritual the atmosphere is, and he was talking about how careful the devotees must be to take advantage of the atmosphere. From that day, I started thinking, this is my Guru Maharaj, just because of the way he spoke. His lecture had been so precise and inclusive that it had encompassed every other philosophy and every other teacher I had ever heard. I could see also that Prabhupada's example was pure, and I could see his disciples were actually giving up sinful life. I used to go to his darshans every day, although I was still living on the bank of the Yamuna. All the people of Vrindavan were glorifying Prabhupada. They were so proud of him because the people of Vrindavan are attached to Vrindavan. They love Krishna and they love Vrindavan because Vrindavan is the place where Krishna lives. That is their mood. They worship the land of Vrindavan, but they would tell me that they appreciated Prabhupada. Most of them would call him Swami Bhaktivedanta. They would say he is the greatest saint because he is bringing Vrindavan all over the world. He is making the glories of Vrindavan known to the whole world. Then one day, Prabhupada and his disciples went to an ashram in Ramanareti. I got there late, just as Prabhupada was leaving. He was walking the last 20 yards or so to his taxi, and many Brajavasis were offering the full dandavats in the road. I felt very insignificant, another member of the crowd, and as Prabhupada walked by me, I offered my full obeisances also. When I lifted my head to get up, however, I saw Prabhupada's feet were right there in front of me. I thought, oh my God, Prabhupada is standing right here. I very slowly looked up, and Prabhupada was just standing there looking right at me. He looked me in the eyes for a couple of seconds and then said, so how long have you been here in Vrindavan? I said, about 6 months. Srila Prabhupada, I said, about 6 months, Srila Prabhupada. He just looked at me again and he was in a very serious mood, very compassionate. Gazing into my eyes, he nodded his head and said, do you like it here? I said, this is the most wonderful place I have ever been in my life. Then, all of a sudden, his serious expression just blossomed into the most beautiful smile. His eyes were glistening radiantly, and he looked at me for about 5 or 10 seconds. It seemed like a real long time. I couldn't believe the mercy he was giving me, and then he just replied, "That is very nice. Vrindavan is a wonderful place." And then he walked on. So here, Radhanath Swami basically tells his experience, his interaction with Prabhupada. And Radhanath Swami has been staying in Vrindavan for 6 months. He was already attracted to a lot of gurus in Vrindavan, and they were mostly Prabhupada's godbrothers and also devotees from other sampradayas. And one morning he came for the Bhagavatam class, and he heard Prabhupada chanting the Jai Radha Madhava. And he had never seen anyone sing with such a love for Krishna. And when he heard Prabhupada all the people he had met in India, they had become insignificant. He says that Prabhupada was serious and the quality of devotion was so intense. And Prabhupada would look at him every now and then, kind of nodding And Swami says that probably because he removed Bombay. About was talking how spiritual the atmosphere is in Vrindavan and how the devotees should take advantage of the atmosphere. And Radhanath Swami and lecture was so precise and also encompassed like philosophy and every other teacher that had. Were actually giving up the sinful life and living at the bank of Vrindavan.
You're breaking actually. Isn't he breaking? Or he's breaking for me only?
No, it's for me as well. So
For you as well, yeah. So, okay, maybe I will give brief. So now Maharaj, Radhanath Swami Maharaj, AJ, this is the section where first time we are hearing about Radhanath Swami Maharaj speaking. So he's sharing, and when Prabhupada came once, that time everybody, all the Brajvasi offered full obeisances, prostrated obeisances. And then later, he also, when he came, he also offered. Then he saw that Maharaj Prabhupada is just in front of him. And then he got up and he looked into eyes. He says, "How long you have been in Vrindavan?" So Maharaj says 6 months. Then he said, "Like it?" He said, "Like this is the most best place I have." So Prabhupada says, Vrindavan is best place to live. So most wonderful place to live here. So that changed Maharaj's heart. So we will see, AJ, because now you open your mouth, you can read now. AJ?
yep. Okay. Yeah. I'm sorry. I was on mute. Then all of a sudden, his serious expression has just blossomed into the most beautiful smile. His eyes were glistening radiantly, and he looked for me about 5 or 10 seconds. It seemed like a real long time. I couldn't believe the mercy he was giving me. And then he just replied, "This is very nice. Vrindavan is a wonderful place." And then he walked on. This was very special for me because most of the devotees were always telling me I was in Maya for staying in Vrindavan, and because I was kind of attached to my own program in Vrindavan. I was feeling that the devotees didn't understand, and I was upset with them, thinking that they didn't appreciate the atmosphere. But Prabhupada's words alleviated all my anxieties towards the Hare Krishna movement. It was the most special personal contact. It wasn't what Prabhupada was saying. It was his personal transcendental concern for me. So then I went to his classes every day and all the darshans, and there was no doubt in my mind. He very much convinced me on every level of Krishna consciousness. When Prabhupada left, the devotees told me that I should join and go on parikrama with them all around India, and they said that Prabhupada had personally invited me to come. I was unbelievably appreciative that Prabhupada was so merciful, but at the same time, I was very attached to Vrindavan. I told them I just wanted to stay here, and if they ever came back, I would serve Prabhupada here. But that I didn't want to leave Vrindavan. Soon after that, my visa expired, so I had to leave the country. But before I left, the people of Vrindavan, especially the Babajis, were telling me that Swami Bhaktivedanta had established New Vrindavan in the West. They said, if you have to leave Vrindavan, you should go to New Vrindavan. So whatever you do, don't leave Vrindavan. New Vrindavan and Old Vrindavan are the same because Swami Bhaktivedanta had created the Vrindavan in the West. They said it with great pride, so I left for New Vrindavan. Prabhupada trained his disciples in the etiquette of living in Vrindavan Dhamma. In the Holy Dhamma, he said, if one of my disciples drinks from a jug incorrectly and he contaminates that jug, everyone will notice it. Don't be criticized for this uncleanliness, or I will be criticized. It is the duty of the disciple to follow these etiquette habits very austerely. I am putting so much energy into this party in India because I want to train you how to live here. Prabhupada wrote his disciples in the West of his successful tour of Vrindavan. I am currently living in Vrindavan with a party of 40 devotees, and we're having a daily parikrama of the holy places. We shall return to Delhi tomorrow by coach. The officials and residents of Vrindavan have greeted us very nicely, and they are simply astounded to see our SKP chanting with great jubilation through the city streets. The mayor has publicly proclaimed that I have done something wonderful, and practically speaking, they realized that before I went to the Western countries, no one there knew about Vrindavan. Now, hundreds of visitors and hippies from your country come here to see Krishna's place. The Vrindavan devotees have understood that Vrindavan is now world famous due to my preaching work, so they are all very much appreciating their hometown, Swamiji. So it talks about how, he discusses how, that personal contact with Prabhupada and, that expression and just his general, the general way that he looked at him kind of convinced him that, Krishna consciousness is the right path. Like, I believe in this. And, and he said it wasn't even what Prabhupada was saying. It was just that he says that personal transcendental concern that he had showed was enough to convince him in his mind that everything was, pointing in that direction. So then Prabhupada, I just blew up my screen here. So Prabhupada left, and the rest of the devotees said, "Hey, you should come with us. This Prabhupada wants you to come with us, but you have to leave Vrindavan to do so." And he said, "There's no way. I'm not leaving Vrindavan. If you guys ever come back here, then yeah, I'll serve Prabhupada here, but I'm not going to leave Vrindavan." But then, right, this is Radhanath Swami talking, yeah.
Yes, right. And
Yeah.
don't know how much struggle, how so difficult he found Vrindavan. No one knows.
But yeah.
That's why he never wanted to leave Vrindavan.
Yeah. And then, so he had to leave because his visa was expiring, and people said, "Hey, if you got to leave Vrindavan, go to New Vrindavan. It's the same thing. Prabhupada's created Vrindavan there, and we can do that." I'm driving, so
You're driving. That's why you're
we're dropping off my daughter.
That's okay. I will talk.
Sorry. Yeah, no. So I was saying then, if you want to finish, I'm going to lose my connection.
Yeah, I'm also going to lose. After I summarize this, we will end it here. So Prabhupada wanted to be very careful about devotees with Western children. They don't know how to live. It's a very different way of living. So Prabhupada said, you cannot, even if you want my disciple drinks from a jug incorrectly, then he contaminates that jug. So they don't know, because how to use for the deity is not everything. So Prabhupada said, don't be criticized for this uncleanness. Stay a very high standard. Don't bring bad habits here very much. So Prabhupada wrote to his disciples about the successful tour of Vrindavan, and devotees are living, looks like there. I'm coming to he's in Vrindavan, 40 devotees. We're pilgrimage, and they were received very nicely. Then he's going to Delhi. All these things he wrote update to the other devotees in the West. So with this, I will end it here. Thank you so much. Tomorrow, I'm giving a talk at 4:30. I shared all of you about overcoming fear. Please join. I thought it's very important subject. Please join and ask others to join if they would be interested. Okay, thank you so much. Hare Krishna. Shila Prabhupada ki jai. Prabhupada Lilamrita ki jai. Hare Krishna.